The Alpha King married another woman, while his true mate knelt in chains. He thought her blind eyes could no longer accuse him. The grand wedding hall of Blackthorn's citadel shimmered with silver moonlight and thousands of candles. Black banners embroidered with golden wolves hung from the high ceilings as the entire court gathered to witness the Alpha King's union with Lady Seraphine of House Vael. Elara Voss was dragged into the hall by 2 guards. The iron chains around her wrists clinked loudly with every step. A thin black cloth covered her eyes, yet she kept her chin raised. She had not begged when they came for her. She had not cried when they forced her into the hall. She simply walked with quiet dignity, even as the court whispered and laughed at the sight of the blind traitor's daughter. They pushed her down in the front row and made her kneel on the cold marble. Alpha King Darius Blackthorn stood tall on the raised altar. He looked resplendent in black and silver armor, yet when his golden eyes briefly swept over the kneeling figure in the front row, he quickly looked away. His hand tightened around the chalice for a moment, before he forced himself to relax. He had ordered her visions silenced years ago. By morning, Seraphine's healers had returned her blind. Now, he was marrying another. As the priest raised the ceremonial chalice, Elara felt it, the familiar burning behind her blind eyes, the silver light she had learned to fear. It came without warning, sharper and clearer than ever before. Her blind eyes suddenly snapped open beneath the cloth. Silver light exploded outward, burning through the fabric. The entire hall fell into stunned silence as glowing silver eyes, clear and piercing, stared directly at the altar. Darius froze mid-ceremony. The chalice slipped from his hand and shattered on the marble. Elara's voice rang out, clear and trembling with horror. "I saw your hand holding silver," she whispered. "I saw myself begging you to stop. And then..." Our child's heartbeat went silent. The hall erupted into chaos. Darius looked as if the silver blade in her vision had turned inside his own chest. Seraphine's perfect smile vanished. Her thumb pressed against the silver charm at her throat until a faint black line appeared beneath the metal. Darius stepped down from the altar, his face pale. "What did you see?" he demanded, voice rough. Elara's silver eyes glowed brighter. Tears slipped down her cheeks as the vision consumed her. "I saw the life beneath my heart," she said, her voice breaking. "I saw you reach for it, while I begged you to stop." The court gasped. Seraphine's voice cut through the noise, sharp and furious. "Seize her," she hissed. "She is lying to ruin our wedding." But no one moved, because every wolf in the hall could feel it. The ancient power of a true blind oracle had awakened, and she had just seen the future that would destroy the Alpha King from the inside. Elara remained on her knees, silver eyes glowing, tears running down her face as she stared at the man who had once been her everything, the man whose future had just reached for the life beneath her heart. Darius stood frozen, staring at the blind woman he had rejected. He had laughed when she first told him she was his true mate. He had believed Seraphine when she said Elara's visions were dangerous lies. He had ordered her, silenced. Now that same silence had shattered, and the truth she carried was louder than any wolf howl. He took one unsteady step toward her. "Elara," he whispered, but before he could reach her, Seraphine's voice rang out again. "Take her away. She is dangerous." The guards finally moved, grabbing Elara's arms. She did not resist. She simply kept her glowing silver eyes on Darius as they dragged her backward. The last thing she saw before the silver light faded and darkness returned was the look on his face. Not anger, not hatred, but something far more dangerous. Fear, and something that looked dangerously close to regret. The court erupted into frantic whispers as the guards pulled Elara out of the hall. Seraphine's perfect composure had cracked, her thumb still pressing hard against the silver charm at her throat. Darius remained standing in the center of the ruined ceremony, staring at the shattered chalice on the floor. He had ordered Elara's vision silenced years ago because he could not bear the truth she carried. Now that truth had returned, louder, clearer, and more terrifying than ever. And it had shown him the future that would destroy him from the inside. Behind the altar, the shattered chalice began to bleed silver light. The vision was not over. It had only chosen its first witness. The guards dragged Elara into a small stone chamber near the royal wing. They removed the chains from her wrists but left the black cloth over her eyes before locking the heavy door. She sat on the cold floor, breathing slowly, trying to steady the silver light still flickering behind her eyelids. Outside, the palace was in chaos. She could hear hurried footsteps and raised voices. Somewhere far away, the wedding hall still echoed with confusion. The door opened again. Footsteps entered. The door closed. Elara knew who it was before he spoke. Darius stood in front of her. She could feel the weight of his presence, the tension rolling off him in waves. He did not speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice was low and rough. "You saw our child die." Elara kept her head lowered. "I saw what may come," she answered quietly. "Not what must come." Darius took a step closer. "You said I would do it," he said. "You said I would drive the blade myself." Elara did not answer immediately. She could feel his guilt pressing against the walls of the room. "You asked what I saw," she said. "I told you the truth." Darius was silent for several seconds. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "I ordered your visions silenced because I could not bear what you said back then. I thought you were lying to gain power. Seraphine told me your sight was dangerous." Elara felt a bitter smile touch her lips. "And you believed her." Darius did not deny it. He moved closer and stopped just in front of her. She could feel the heat of his body. "Take off the cloth," he said. Elara hesitated, then slowly reached up and removed the black cloth from her eyes. Even though she could not see him, she knew he was studying her face. Darius's breath caught. "Your eyes," he whispered. "They were silver." "They only open when I see death," she said. "Your death, and the death of the life beneath my heart." Darius was quiet for a long moment. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said at last. "I thought I was protecting the kingdom." Elara turned her face toward the sound of his voice. "You protected your throne," she said, "and you let them take my sight." Before Darius could answer, the door opened again. Lady Seraphine stepped inside, flanked by 2 guards. Her face was composed, but her fingers were tight around the silver charm at her throat. She looked at Elara with cold eyes. "My king," she said smoothly, "the council is waiting. This woman must be taken to the lower cells. She has disrupted a royal wedding with dangerous claims." Darius turned to look at her. "She spoke what she saw," he said. Seraphine's smile was thin. "And what she saw was treason. She claimed you would kill your own heir. Such words cannot be allowed to spread." Elara felt the air in the room shift. Seraphine's thumb pressed against the silver charm again. The charm flashed once beneath her thumb. Elara's breath caught as invisible pressure closed around her throat, cold and silver. It felt like an invisible collar had snapped shut. For one terrifying second, her vision vanished completely. Even the silver light behind her eyes went dark. She gasped and clutched at her throat. Darius noticed immediately. "What did you do?" he demanded, stepping in front of Elara. Seraphine's expression remained calm. "I'm only protecting the court from her lies," she said. "The charm was made to silence false oracles. It seems to still work." Darius's golden eyes darkened with anger. "Remove it." Seraphine did not move. Behind them, the shattered chalice in the wedding hall suddenly rang out, a clear, sharp sound that echoed through the entire palace. Every wolf in the corridor lowered its head toward Elara's cell. The old oracle law had already marked her. If Darius sent her to the cells now, the court would see it as defying the first wolf. Darius looked at Elara. For a brief moment, something raw crossed his face. Guilt, fear, and something deeper he was clearly trying to control. Silver light flickered behind Elara's useless eyes again. For one heartbeat, she saw Seraphine standing beside a cradle wrapped in black thorns. The silver charm at her throat was open, and something inside it was beating like a second heart. The vision vanished as quickly as it came. Elara's breath trembled. "She is not only afraid of what I saw," she said quietly. "She is afraid of what the child will become." Seraphine's fingers tightened around the charm once more, but she said nothing. Darius turned back to her. "She will stay in the East Wing," he said, "under my guard. If the Oracle law has awakened, no council cell can hold her without starting a blood judgment." Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "My king, you are letting emotion cloud your judgment." Darius looked at her coldly. "I am following the law," he said. "The same law you used to silence her years ago." Seraphine was silent for a moment. Then she smiled, a cold, controlled smile. "As you wish," she said, "but the council will demand answers, and they will not be as forgiving as you." She turned and left the room, the two guards following her. The door closed. Darius remained standing in front of Elara. The silence stretched between them. Finally, he spoke. "I do not know what to believe," he said, "but I know I cannot look away from you again." Elara felt the words settle in her chest. She had waited years to hear something close to regret from him, but she also knew one thing with certainty. The vision was not finished. In the abandoned wedding hall, the shattered chalice bled one final thread of silver light across the marble. The light crawled slowly toward Seraphine's fallen wedding veil, and beneath the veil, something began to beat like a second heart. The East Wing felt colder than before. Elara stood by the tall window, one hand lightly resting on the stone ledge. Even without sight, she could feel the tension pressing in from every direction. The silver light behind her eyes had faded, but the memory of what she had seen in the hidden chamber still lingered. She heard the door open. Darius entered. He did not speak at first. She heard him stop near the center of the room, as if he was gathering his thoughts. "You should stay here," he said finally. "It is the safest place for now." Elara turned toward his voice. Running would have been easier, but easy choices had already cost her too much. "I will not hide while Seraphine moves against me," she said. "Take me to the council. If she wants judgment, then let her lie where the Oracle law can hear her." Darius was silent for a moment. Before he could answer, a sharp pain suddenly circled Elara's right wrist. She inhaled sharply and touched it. Beneath her skin, raised lines were forming. A ring of black thorns, cold as moonlit iron. The pain was not deep, but it was clear. Seraphine had reached her even from afar. Darius noticed her sudden movement. "What happened?" he asked, stepping closer. Elara held up her wrist. Even though she could not see it, she knew what had appeared. "Seraphine," she said quietly. "She is marking me." Darius's expression darkened. He reached for her wrist but stopped before touching it, as if afraid the mark would burn him too. At that moment, a guard knocked urgently on the door. "My king," the man said. "Lady Seraphine demands an immediate audience with the council. She says the Oracle law has been broken and that the blind woman must be brought for judgment tonight." Darius opened the door slightly. "Tell her I will decide when and where. Elara will speak," he said coldly. The guard hesitated. "My king." She also said that if you refuse, the court will see it as you protecting a false oracle. The old law is already stirring. Darius closed the door. He turned back to Elara, his jaw tight. "She is forcing my hand," he said. "If I keep you here without letting the council see you, they will claim I am defying the first wolf." Elara stood straighter. "Then let them see me," she said. "I am not afraid of her lies." Darius studied her for a long moment. Then he walked out of the room without another word. Elara waited alone. Minutes later, the door opened again. Darius returned, but this time he carried something in his hand. Seraphine's fallen wedding veil. Silver light crawled through the delicate lace like a living vein, pulsing slowly. Even without sight, Elara could feel the strange energy coming from it. "This was found behind the altar," Darius said, his voice low. "It was moving toward your cell." He placed the veil on the table between them. The silver light inside it throbbed once, as if it was trying to reach her. Elara felt the black thorns on her wrist pulse in response. Darius looked at her wrist, then at the veil. "Seraphine is not just using words," he said. "She is using the veil to reach you." Elara touched the thorns on her skin again. They felt cold and alive. "She wants the child's heart," she said, "and she is willing to use anything to get it." Darius stepped closer. His voice was quieter now. "I should have stopped the wedding the moment your eyes opened," he said. "I should have listened to you years ago." Elara turned her face toward him. "You cannot change what you did," she said, "but you can choose what you do now." Darius reached out slowly and took her hand, the one without the black thorns. His thumb brushed over her skin. "I will not let her take you or our child," he said, "even if it means standing against the entire court." Elara felt the warmth of his touch. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to lean into it, but the danger was no longer waiting in the distance. It was already here, far below the palace. In her hidden chamber, Seraphine stood before an open silver charm. The second heartbeat inside it beat once. Then it changed. It began beating in time with the child beneath Elara's heart. Seraphine smiled. The connection had been made, and now the heart was listening to her as well. The council chamber was colder than Elara remembered. Even without sight, she could feel the weight of dozens of eyes upon her as the guards led her and Darius inside. The silver charm on Seraphine's throat pulsed faintly in the distance, sending small ripples of pressure through the black thorns on Elara's wrist. Darius walked beside her, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, a silent promise. She could feel the tension in his body, the way his fingers twitched, as if ready to draw his sword at any moment. The council lords sat around the long obsidian table. Their whispers died as Darius and Elara entered. Lady Seraphine stood at the head of the table, beautiful and composed, the silver charm at her throat gleaming like a blade. "My lords," Seraphine began, her voice smooth as silk, "we are gathered because the blind woman has disrupted a sacred wedding with dangerous visions. She claims the Alpha King will kill his own heir. Such words are not prophecy. They are treason." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Elara stepped forward before Darius could speak. Her voice was quiet but carried clearly. "I did not choose these visions," she said. "They chose me. I saw silver in the king's hand. I saw myself begging him to stop. And I felt our child's heartbeat go silent." The room fell deathly quiet. One old lord leaned forward, his voice trembling. "You speak of the future as if it is already written. How can we trust the words of a woman who was once declared mad?" Seraphine smiled gently. "Exactly, my lord. She was silenced once for her lies. Now she returns with new ones." Elara felt the black thorns on her wrist tighten. The pressure moved up her arm, making her breath catch. Seraphine was using the charm again. Darius noticed immediately. He stepped in front of her, his voice low and dangerous. "Enough, Seraphine. If you use that charm on her one more time, I will rip it from your throat myself." Seraphine's smile did not waver. "I am only protecting the court from false prophecy, my king." Elara pushed past the pain and stepped forward again. She raised her hand, palm open. "Then let the oracle law decide," she said. "If my vision is false, let it silence me forever. But if it is true, let the court see what I have seen." The silver light behind her eyes flared without warning. For one heartbeat, the entire council chamber filled with silver mist. Every lord gasped as images flashed before them. A silver dagger, a broken cradle, Darius standing over it with empty eyes. The vision lasted only seconds. When it faded, several lords had gone pale. One clutched his chest. Seraphine's face had lost all color. Darius stared at Elara, his golden eyes wide with shock and something deeper, fear for what she carried inside her. The old lord who had spoken earlier rose slowly. "If this is true," he said, voice shaking, "then the king's future is cursed. The child must be taken for the safety of the bloodline." Elara's hand tightened over her stomach. "You will not take my child from me," she said, voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. "Not while I still breathe." Darius moved beside her. His hand found hers and held it tightly. "The child stays with its mother," he declared, voice ringing through the chamber. "Any man who tries to separate them will answer to me." Seraphine's eyes flashed with cold fury. "You are making a grave mistake, my king," she said softly. "The court will not accept a blind woman carrying a cursed child as the future of our bloodline." She stepped closer, her voice dropping so only Darius and Elara could hear. "And when the child is born," she whispered, "I will make sure it never draws its first breath." The black thorns on Elara's wrist burned hotter. Darius's hand tightened around Elara's. The silver charm at Seraphine's throat pulsed once, and from deep beneath the palace, the second heartbeat answered, louder, stronger, and perfectly in sync with the child inside Elara's womb. The council chamber fell into stunned silence. The war for their child had just begun. The council chamber had emptied, but the weight of their words still hung heavy in the air. Elara stood beside Darius, her hand still in his. The black thorns on her wrist had stopped burning, but the cold pressure remained, a constant reminder that Seraphine was watching. Darius looked down at her. His golden eyes were no longer guarded. They were raw, filled with guilt, fear, and something deeper that made Elara's heart ache. "Come with me," he said quietly. He led her through the silent corridors to a private balcony overlooking the moonlit mountains. The night air was cool against her skin. Elara leaned against the stone railing, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. Darius stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body. "I keep seeing it," he said after a long silence. "The vision you showed the council. My hand holding the silver blade. Our child's heartbeat going silent." Elara turned her face toward him. "It does not have to end that way," she whispered. "Visions show possible futures, not fixed ones." Darius reached out and gently placed his hand over hers on her stomach. The moment their skin touched, a faint silver thread appeared between them, pulsing softly. "I do not deserve your forgiveness," he said, voice rough. "I hurt you. I silenced you. I let them blind you. And now, I have put our child in danger." Elara felt tears sting her eyes. She had waited so long to hear him speak like this. Not as a king, but as a man. She made her major decision. She turned fully toward him and reached up, her fingers finding his face. She traced the line of his jaw, feeling the tension there. "I do not forgive you yet," she said softly. "But I am choosing to trust you now, for our child, and for whatever is between us." Darius's breath caught. He covered her hand with his own, pressing it against his cheek. "I do not know how to be the man you need," he admitted. "But I will learn. I will fight for you. For both of you." The silver thread between them brightened. Elara felt the child stir inside her, not with fear this time, but with a small, warm pulse of recognition. Darius leaned closer. His forehead rested against hers. "I'm afraid," he whispered. "I have never been this afraid before." "So am I," Elara replied. They stayed like that for a long moment, foreheads touching, hands gently resting over the life they had created. The night wind carried the scent of pine and distant snow. For the first time since the wedding, Elara allowed herself to feel something close to safety in his arms. But safety was an illusion. A guard's hurried footsteps broke the moment. "My king," the man said, bowing quickly. Lady Seraphine has summoned the High Council again. She claims she has new evidence against the blind woman. She says the silver charm has shown her the truth. Darius's body tensed. Elara felt the black thorns on her wrist pulse once. Sharper this time. She is moving fast, Elara whispered. She will not wait until dawn. Darius turned to the guard. Tell the council I will attend, and that Elara will come with me. The guard bowed and left. Darius looked at Elara, his golden eyes filled with determination and fear. Are you ready for this? He asked. Elara touched her stomach gently. I am ready to fight for our child, she said. Darius took her hand. Then we fight together. They walked toward the council chamber side by side. The black thorns on Elara's wrist burned hotter with every step. The silver charm on Seraphine's throat was waiting for them. As they approached the chamber doors, Elara felt a new wave of silver light flicker behind her eyes. For one heartbeat, she saw Seraphine standing before the council, holding a small silver dagger, the same one from her vision. The vision faded. Elara squeezed Darius's hand tighter. She has the blade, she whispered. The one from my vision. Darius's jaw clenched. Then we will take it from her. The council chamber doors opened. Seraphine stood at the head of the table, the silver charm at her throat glowing brightly. Her eyes met Elara's with cold satisfaction. The second heartbeat inside the charm was no longer faint. It was loud, and it was calling for the child. The final confrontation had begun. The council chamber felt like a cage made of stone and suspicion. Elara stood beside Darius, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. The black thorns on her wrist pulsed with every heartbeat, cold and insistent. She could feel Seraphine's silver charm reaching for the child inside her, trying to pull at the fragile life she carried. Seraphine stood at the head of the long obsidian table, beautiful and composed, the silver charm at her throat glowing with soft, dangerous light. My lords, Seraphine said, her voice smooth as poisoned honey. We cannot ignore what has happened. The blind woman's vision threatens the very future of our bloodline. The second ritual must be completed. The child's heart must be tested. Murmurs rippled through the council. One old lord slammed his hand on the table. If the child carries the undying heart, it belongs to the throne. A servant cannot be allowed to raise it. Elara felt the words like a blade pressed against her womb. She stepped forward, refusing to stay silent. This child is not yours to claim, she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. It is mine, and I will not let you rip it from my body to feed your dying bloodline. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. She touched the silver charm at her throat. The black thorns on Elara's wrist tightened sharply. Pain shot up her arm. For a terrifying moment, she felt the child's heartbeat falter. Darius moved instantly, pulling Elara behind him. Touch her again, he growled at Seraphine, and I will tear that charm from your neck. Seraphine smiled, but it was cold and sharp. You are blinded by her, my king. The oracle law is clear. The child must be tested. If it carries the true heart, it will be raised by the throne. If not, the mother will answer for deception. Elara pressed both hands over her stomach. The warmth inside her was growing weaker. The child's voice echoed faintly in her mind. Mother. It hurts. Tears burned in Elara's eyes. She stepped out from behind Darius, facing the council directly. I am not afraid of your ritual, she said, but I will not let you take my child while I still breathe. If you want the heart, you will have to kill me first. The chamber fell silent. Darius looked at her, his golden eyes filled with a mixture of pride and fear. He moved to stand beside her, shoulder to shoulder. The child stays with its mother, he declared, voice ringing through the hall. Any man who tries to separate them will answer to the Dragon King. Seraphine's fingers tightened around the silver charm. Then you leave us no choice, she said softly. The old law will decide. She raised her hand. The silver charm flashed. The black thorns on Elara's wrist exploded with pain. She cried out, dropping to one knee. The child's heartbeat inside her stuttered violently. Darius roared and pulled her into his arms, trying to shield her with his body. Golden dragon fire flared across his skin as he fought against the magic. "Stop this!" he shouted at Seraphine, but the charm only glowed brighter. Elara gasped against Thorn's chest, tears running down her face. "The child," she whispered. "It's getting weaker." Seraphine's voice was calm and victorious. "The second ritual has already begun. The heart will be taken, whether you like it or not." Darius held Elara tighter, his voice breaking with rage and desperation. "I will burn this entire kingdom to the ground before I let you take our child." The silver charm pulsed once more. The black thorns dug deeper into Elara's wrist, and from deep beneath the palace, the second ritual's circle answered with a low, triumphant roar. Elara clutched Darius's tunic, breathing through the pain. She could feel the child fighting inside her, small, terrified, but still alive. She made her decision. She would not let them win, even if it meant giving everything she had. She looked up at Darius, her voice barely a whisper. "Whatever happens, protect our child." Darius's golden eyes burned with fierce determination. "I will protect both of you," he vowed, "or I will die trying." Seraphine smiled as the silver charm glowed brighter. The final pull had begun, and this time, the circle would not stop until it claimed the undying heart. The council chamber had emptied, but the echo of their words still lingered like smoke after a fire. Elara stood beside Darius, her body trembling from the strain of the black thorns and the second ritual's pull. One hand remained pressed firmly over her stomach, as if she could physically shield the fragile life inside her from the world that wanted to tear it away. Darius kept his arm around her waist, supporting her weight. His golden eyes were no longer cold. They burned with something raw. Guilt, fear, and a fierce protectiveness that made Elara's heart ache. He led her out of the chamber and through the quieter corridors until they reached a small balcony overlooking the moonlit mountains. The night air was cool against her skin. Elara leaned against the stone railing, breathing slowly, trying to steady the weak pulse of the child inside her. Darius stood close behind her, his presence warm and solid. "I keep seeing it," he said quietly. "The vision you showed them. My hand holding the silver blade. Our child's heartbeat going silent." Elara turned toward him. Even without sight, she could feel the tension in his body, the way his hands clenched at his sides. She made her major decision. She reached out and took his hand, placing it gently over her stomach. "This child is not just yours," she whispered. "It is ours, and I will not let Seraphine or the council take it from me. Not while I still breathe." Darius's breath caught. His fingers spread gently across her belly. The child stirred weakly beneath his touch, as if recognizing its father. "I do not deserve this," he said, voice rough with emotion. "I do not deserve you. I silenced you. I let them blind you. I almost lost you both today." Elara kept his hand on her stomach. The warmth inside her pulsed faintly in response to his touch. "You cannot change what you did," she said softly. "But you can choose what you do now. Stand with me, Darius. Not as a king protecting his bloodline, but as a father protecting his child." Darius's hand trembled slightly against her. He stepped closer, wrapping his other arm around her waist and pulling her gently against his chest. His forehead rested against hers. "I choose you," he whispered, "both of you, no matter what it costs me." For the first time since the wedding, Elara allowed herself to lean into him. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. The mate bond between them stirred, faint but real. A thin silver thread appeared for a moment, connecting her heart to his. The child gave a small, tired kick beneath their joined hands. Darius exhaled shakily. "I felt that," he whispered in awe. Elara smiled through her tears. "So did I." They stood together in the moonlight, two broken people holding on to something fragile and precious. For a few precious moments, the danger felt distant, but it was never truly gone. A sharp pain suddenly flared around Elara's wrist. The black thorns tightened violently. She gasped and clutched her arm. The child's heartbeat inside her stuttered. Darius's eyes widened with alarm. "Elara," Seraphine's voice echoed from the corridor behind them, calm and cold. "The second ritual circle has fully awakened," she said. "The old law demands the heart. You cannot stop it, my king." Darius spun around, pushing Elara behind him. Seraphine stood at the entrance of the balcony, flanked by guards. The silver charm at her throat glowed brightly. "The child's heart is calling to the circle," Seraphine continued. "It wants to return to its rightful bloodline. Let it go, Darius, before it kills her from the inside." Elara felt the pull again, stronger this time. The black thorns dug deeper. The child's voice cried out weakly in her mind. "Mother, it's pulling me." She clutched Darius's arm, breathing through the pain. Darius's golden eyes burned with fury. He drew his sword, golden dragonfire igniting along the blade. "You will not touch her," he snarled. "And you will not touch our child." Seraphine smiled, but her eyes were cold. "Then watch her die slowly," she said. "The circle has already begun its work. The heart will be mine." The black thorns on Elara's wrist flared with searing pain. She cried out, knees buckling. Darius caught her before she could fall, holding her tightly against his chest. The child's heartbeat inside her grew fainter. Elara looked up at Darius through the pain, her voice barely a whisper. "Whatever happens, promise me you will protect our child." Darius's eyes filled with raw desperation. He pressed his forehead against hers. "I promise," he said, voice breaking. "I will protect both of you, even if it costs me everything." The silver charm on Seraphine's throat pulsed brighter. The second ritual circle answered from deep beneath the palace with a low, triumphant roar, and the final pull on the child's heart began. The second ritual circle roared like a living beast beneath the palace. Golden threads tore viciously from Elara's womb, dragging at the ancient heart inside her. She remained on her feet only because Darius held her upright. His arms locked around her like iron. Pain ripped through her body in relentless waves, but she refused to scream. She would not give Seraphine that victory. The child's voice was growing weaker inside her mind. "Mother, I'm slipping." Elara's knees buckled. Darius caught her, pulling her tighter against his chest. His golden dragonfire blazed across his skin as he tried to burn away the threads. But the second circle only grew stronger. Seraphine stood at the edge of the glowing circle, the silver charm at her throat pulsing with dark satisfaction. "Let it go, Darius," she said softly. "The heart was never meant to belong to a blind prophetess. It belongs to the throne, to me." Darius's voice was a snarl. "You will not take my child." He raised his sword, golden fire exploding along the blade, and struck at the glowing threads. Sparks flew as he cut through them, but new ones immediately rose to replace them, wrapping tighter around Elara's waist. Elara gasped, clutching her stomach. The pain was blinding. She could feel the child's heartbeat slowing, the ancient heart struggling against the ritual's hunger. She made her choice. She would not let them steal her child while she still had breath. With the last of her strength, she pushed away from Darius and stepped directly into the center of the glowing circle. The black thorns on her wrist burned like fire, but she ignored them. She raised both hands and spoke with a voice that was no longer only hers. "You will not take what is mine." The silver light behind her eyes exploded outward. The entire chamber filled with blinding silver radiance. The golden threads that had been pulling at her suddenly recoiled, snapping back into her body with violent force. The second circle screamed. The runes on the floor cracked, one by one. The iron stake in the center shattered. Seraphine staggered back, her hand flying to the silver charm at her throat as it burned against her skin. Elara stood in the center of the breaking circle, silver light pouring from her eyes. Her voice echoed with ancient power. "I am the last blind oracle," she said, "and this child is not yours to claim." The silver light flared brighter. The black thorns on her wrist dissolved into ash. The pull on the child's heart vanished completely. The child gave a strong, healthy kick inside her. "Mother, I'm here." Tears ran down Elara's face as she felt the heartbeat steady again. Darius stared at her in awe. He stepped forward and pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she might disappear. The council lords who had followed them into the chamber fell to their knees, eyes wide with shock and fear. Seraphine's face twisted with rage. The silver charm at her throat cracked loudly. "You think this changes anything?" she hissed. "The old law has already been invoked. The heart will be taken, one way or another." She raised her hand. The broken pieces of the charm glowed with dark energy, but before she could strike, Darius stepped in front of Elara, sword raised. Golden dragonfire blazed along the blade. "Try it," he said, voice deadly calm. "And I will end your bloodline here and now." Seraphine's eyes burned with hatred. She looked at Elara, then at Darius, and finally at the council lords kneeling before them. She smiled. A cold, dangerous smile. "You have made your choice, my king," she said softly. "Now the kingdom will make theirs." She turned and walked away, her guards following her. The chamber fell silent. Darius turned to Elara. He gently cupped her face, his thumb brushing away her tears. "You were incredible," he whispered. "You saved our child." Elara leaned into his touch, exhausted but unbroken, but she could still feel it. The second circle was not destroyed. It had only been wounded, and somewhere deep beneath the palace, it was already beginning to awaken again. Darius pressed his forehead against hers. "I will not let them touch you again," he vowed. "No matter what it costs me." Elara closed her eyes. She wanted to believe him, but as the silver light behind her eyes flickered one last time, she saw a new vision. Seraphine standing in a hidden chamber, holding a silver dagger, the same dagger from her first vision, and beside her, the black thorns were no longer on Elara's wrist. They were wrapped around the throat of her unborn child. Elara's breath caught. The real battle had only just begun. The broken ritual circle still smoked beneath their feet. Golden embers drifted through the air like dying stars as Darius held Elara against his chest. Her body trembled from exhaustion and the aftershock of the ritual. The black thorns on her wrist had turned to ash, but the memory of their bite still burned beneath her skin. The child inside her gave a weak but steady kick. Elara pressed both hands over her stomach, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. "He's still here," she whispered. "Our son, he's fighting." Darius's arms tightened around her. His golden eyes were filled with a storm of guilt, rage, and something deeper he no longer tried to hide. He brushed a strand of soot-covered hair from her face with trembling fingers. "I almost lost you both," he said, voice raw. Again, Elara leaned into him, too tired to pretend. She didn't need his strength. The silver light behind her eyes had faded, but the visions still lingered. Fragments of silver blades and black thorns wrapped around a tiny throat. Seraphine's voice echoed from the corridor outside. "The council will not forgive this, my king," she called, her tone calm but laced with poison. "You have defied the old law. The court is already gathering. They will demand the child be taken for the safety of the bloodline." Darius's body tensed like a drawn bow. He kept one arm around Elara and turned toward the broken doorway, sword still in his other hand. "Then they will have to go through me," he growled. Elara felt the child stir again, weaker this time. The second ritual had taken too much. She could feel the ancient heart inside her struggling to keep beating. She made her major decision. She gently pushed away from Darius's chest and stood on her own, even though her legs shook. She turned toward the corridor where Seraphine waited. "I will not hide," she said clearly. "If the court wants to judge me, let them look me in the eyes while they try to take my child." Darius stepped beside her. His hand found hers and held it tightly. "Then we face them together," he said. They walked out of the ruined chamber side by side. The corridors were lined with guards and nobles who had gathered at the sound of the battle. Their eyes widened when they saw Elara, covered in ash and golden embers, yet standing tall beside the king. Seraphine waited at the end of the hall, flanked by the High Council. The silver charm at her throat pulsed with dark energy. "The second ritual circle has been damaged," Seraphine announced, her voice carrying through the corridor. "But the old law still stands. The undying heart must be removed from the vessel for the safety of the kingdom." She looked directly at Elara. "Hand over the child, or we will take it by force." Elara felt the child's heartbeat falter again. She pressed her hand harder over her stomach and stepped forward. "This child is not a vessel," she said, voice steady despite the exhaustion and pain. "He is my son, and I will burn this entire palace to the ground before I let you rip him from me." The silver charm at Seraphine's throat glowed brighter. Elara felt an invisible pressure close around her throat once more. The black thorns tried to reform on her wrist. Darius moved instantly, pulling Elara behind him and raising his sword. Golden dragon fire ignited along the blade. "Try it," he said, voice deadly calm. "And I will end you where you stand." The corridor fell silent. Then, from deep beneath the palace, the second ritual circle answered with a low, hungry roar. The floor trembled. New red runes began to glow along the walls, reaching toward Elara. Seraphine smiled. "The circle is awake again," she said. "It will not stop until it claims the heart. Give me the child, or watch it die inside you." Elara felt the pull return, sharper, hungrier. The child cried out inside her mind. "I'm scared." Tears ran down Elara's face. She clutched Darius's arm, but she did not fall. She looked at Seraphine with glowing silver eyes. "You can have the heart," she said, voice trembling but fierce. "But only if you kill me first." Darius's hand tightened around hers. The second ritual circle roared louder. Red runes spread across the floor like blood, reaching for Elara's feet. And somewhere deep beneath the palace, the ancient mechanism of the second circle fully awakened, ready to finish what it had started. The final pull on the child's heart had begun. The second ritual circle roared like a living monster beneath the palace floors. Golden threads tore viciously from Elara's womb, dragging at the ancient heart inside her. She stood in the center of the glowing runes, one hand pressed desperately over her stomach, the other gripping Darius's arm so tightly her nails drew blood. Pain ripped through her like claws. The child's heartbeat stuttered inside her mind. "Mother, it's pulling me out." Elara's knees buckled. Darius caught her before she fell, wrapping both arms around her as if he could shield her from the ancient magic itself. Seraphine stood at the edge of the circle, the silver charm at her throat glowing with dark triumph. "Let it go, Darius," she said softly. "The heart was never meant to belong to a blind prophetess and her bastard child. It belongs to the throne, to me." Darius's golden eyes burned with pure rage. "You will not touch them," he snarled. He raised his sword, golden dragon fire exploding along the blade, and struck at the glowing threads. Sparks flew as he cut through them, but more rose immediately, wrapping tighter around Elara's waist and legs. Elara cried out, the pain so sharp it nearly blinded her. She clutched her stomach, tears running down her face. "I will not let you take him," she gasped. "He is mine." Seraphine's laugh was cold and elegant. You still think you have a choice? The second circle has already tasted the heart. It will not stop until it claims what was stolen from my bloodline. Elara felt the child's voice grow fainter. Mother, I'm scared. Rage exploded inside her chest. Not just her own, but something ancient and furious that had slept inside her since the fire. She pushed away from Darius and stepped deeper into the circle, ignoring the agony. She looked directly at Seraphine with glowing silver eyes. You burned me once, she said, voice trembling with fury. You took my sight. You tried to take my child. I will not let you have him. The silver light behind her eyes flared violently. Golden fire erupted from her body, striking the glowing threads. Several of them snapped with loud cracks. The runes on the floor fractured. Seraphine's smile faltered. Darius moved beside her, sword raised, golden dragonfire blazing. You wanted the heart? He roared at Seraphine. Then come and take it from us. Seraphine's fingers tightened around the silver charm. The charm flashed black. The black thorns tried to reform on Elara's wrist. The pressure around her throat returned, choking her breath. Elara gasped, dropping to one knee. The child's heartbeat stuttered again. Mother, please. Rage and betrayal burned through Elara like dragonfire. She had been humiliated. She had been burned. She had been silenced. But she would not let them take her child. She screamed, not in pain, but in pure, unbroken fury. The silver light exploded from her eyes. Golden flames surged outward, shattering more runes on the floor. The silver charm at Seraphine's throat cracked loudly. Seraphine cried out as it burned her skin. The pull on the child's heart suddenly weakened. Elara collapsed forward, catching herself on her hands. She was breathing hard, blood running from her nose, but she kept both hands over her stomach. The child's voice returned, weak but alive. Mother, I'm still here. Darius dropped to his knees beside her and pulled her into his arms. His hands trembled as he held her. I'm here, he whispered fiercely. I'm here. Seraphine staggered back, clutching her burned throat. Her perfect mask had finally shattered. Hatred burned in her eyes. You think this is victory? She hissed. The second circle has tasted the heart. It will never stop, and when it claims what it wants, you will both watch your child die. She turned and fled into the shadows, guards following her. Darius held Elara tighter. He pressed his forehead against hers, breathing hard. I will kill her, he said quietly. I will burn everything she loves before I let her touch you again. Elara clutched his tunic, tears running down her face. The child's heartbeat was still weak, but it was there. She looked up at Darius, her voice barely a whisper. She will not stop, she said. She wants the heart, and she will kill our child to get it. Darius's golden eyes burned with a deadly promise. Then I will kill her first. The palace shook once more as the damaged second circle roared beneath them. The final battle for their child's life had only just begun, and Seraphine was already preparing her next move. The palace trembled as the second ritual circle fully awakened. Golden threads tore through the stone floors like living veins, reaching for Elara with merciless hunger. She stood in the center of the glowing runes, one hand pressed desperately over her stomach, the other gripping Darius's arm. Pain ripped through her body in violent waves, but she refused to fall. The child's voice was fading inside her mind. Mother, I can't hold on. Elara's knees buckled. Darius caught her, pulling her tightly against his chest. His golden dragonfire blazed across his skin as he tried to burn the threads away, but the circle only grew stronger, feeding on the ancient heart inside her womb. Seraphine stood at the edge of the ritual circle, the silver charm at her throat glowing with dark triumph. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. Let it go, Darius. The heart was never meant for her. It belongs to the throne. To me. Darius roared and swung his sword, golden fire exploding along the blade. He cut through several threads, but more rose immediately, wrapping around Elara's waist and legs. Elara cried out, the pain so sharp it nearly blinded her. She clutched her stomach, tears streaming down her face. I will not lose you, she whispered fiercely to the child. Stay with me, please. Stay with me. The child's heartbeat stuttered. Mother. It hurts, Seraphine smiled. The circle has tasted the heart, she said. It will not stop until it claims what was stolen from my bloodline. Give me the child, and I will let you live. Elara felt the life inside her slipping away. The warmth that had kept her strong since the fire was fading. She looked up at Darius, her voice breaking. If it comes down to me or the child, she whispered. Save our son. Darius's golden eyes filled with raw anguish. He held her tighter, his voice cracking. I will not choose, he said. I will not lose either of you. He dropped his sword and wrapped both arms around her, pouring every ounce of his dragon fire into shielding her from the ritual. Golden flames blazed around them, fighting against the red runes. But the second circle was ancient. It was stronger. The threads tightened. Elara screamed as pain tore through her womb. The child's heartbeat grew dangerously faint. Seraphine raised the silver charm. The heart is mine, she whispered. Elara felt the final pull, the ancient heart inside her being dragged toward the surface. She collapsed against Darius, her body shaking. In that moment of pure despair, she made her last choice. She would give everything to save her child. She pushed away from Darius and stepped directly into the heart of the glowing circle. The pain became unbearable, but she forced herself to stand. She looked at Seraphine with glowing silver eyes. You want the heart? She gasped. Then take it from me. Golden fire erupted from her body. It collided with the second circle in a violent explosion of light. The runes on the floor shattered. The silver charm at Seraphine's throat cracked loudly. Seraphine screamed as the charm burned her skin. The pull on the child's heart suddenly weakened. Elara dropped to her knees, blood running from her nose and mouth. She clutched her stomach, breathing in short, painful gasps. The child's voice returned, weak but alive. Mother. I'm still here. Darius fell to his knees beside her and pulled her into his arms. His hands trembled as he held her. You're safe, he whispered brokenly. Both of you. Seraphine staggered back, clutching her burned throat. Her perfect mask had shattered completely. Hatred burned in her eyes. You have only delayed the inevitable, she hissed. The circle has tasted the heart. It will never stop. And when it claims what it wants, you will watch your child die. She turned and fled into the shadows, guards following her. Darius held Elara tighter. He pressed his forehead against hers, tears in his golden eyes. I almost lost you both, he whispered. I will never let that happen again. Elara leaned against him, exhausted beyond words. The child's heartbeat was still weak, but it was there. She looked up at Darius, her voice barely a whisper. She will come back, she said. She will not stop until she has the heart. Darius's eyes burned with fierce determination. Then I will end her before she gets the chance. The palace shook once more as the damaged second circle roared beneath them. The final battle for their child's life was coming, and this time, neither of them would run. The second ritual circle finally shattered at dawn. Golden fire erupted through the lower halls, cracking ancient stone and silencing the hungry red runes. Lyriel collapsed into Darius's arms as the last golden thread snapped back into her body. The warmth inside her womb steadied. Weak, but no longer being torn away, she pressed both hands over her stomach, tears running down her soot-streaked face. He's still here, she whispered. Our son. He's still fighting. Darius held her tightly, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other resting over hers on her belly. His golden eyes were wet with unshed tears, something no one in the kingdom had ever seen from the Dragon King. "I thought I lost you both," he said, voice breaking. "I thought I failed you again." Lirael leaned into him, exhausted but alive. The child gave a small, tired kick beneath their joined hands. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever felt. Behind them, Lord Veyron lay among the broken stone, breathing but defeated. The black crystal had shattered completely in his hand. His eyes met Lirael's one last time. "You should have died," he rasped. Lirael looked down at him without hatred, only quiet exhaustion. "I did," she said, "and I came back stronger." Darius signaled the loyal guards. They dragged Veyron away. The man who had tried to steal her child's heart would face the court's judgment. The corridor fell silent. Darius gently cupped Lirael's face, his thumbs brushing away tears and ash. "I do not deserve you," he said. "I do not deserve either of you. I silenced you. I let them burn you. I almost lost you both because I was too blind to see the truth." Lirael placed her hand over his. "You cannot change the past," she whispered. "But you chose us when it mattered most. That is enough." Darius slowly lowered himself to one knee in front of her, right there in the ruined corridor. He took her hand and pressed it to his lips. "Stay with me," he said. "Not as a servant, not as a secret, as my queen, as the mother of our child, as the woman who brought fire back to my blood." Lirael felt tears fall again. She knelt with him, ignoring the pain in her body, and rested her forehead against his. "I will stay," she said, "because you finally chose us." They held each other among the broken stone and fading runes, two broken people who had survived fire, betrayal, and the hunger of old laws. Later that morning, Lirael stood on the royal balcony overlooking the kingdom. The sun was rising, painting the mountains in gold. Darius stood behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist, hands gently resting over her pregnant belly. The child kicked again. Stronger this time. Darius pressed a kiss to the side of her neck. "Our son," he murmured in wonder. Lirael smiled softly. "Our son," she repeated. The kingdom was still in turmoil. The court was divided. Veyron's allies were already whispering of rebellion. The second circle beneath the palace had been damaged, but its hunger still lingered in the stone. But for now, in this quiet moment, none of that mattered. Lirael turned in Darius's arms and looked up at him. She reached up and gently touched his face. "I forgive you," she said, "not because you deserve it, but because I choose to build something new with you." Darius's golden eyes shimmered. He leaned down and kissed her, slow, deep, and full of everything they had survived. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said, the first time he had ever said the words. "I should have said it long before the fire took you." Lirael smiled through her tears. "I know," she whispered, "and I love you. Even when I hated you, I still loved you." They stood together as the sun rose higher, golden light touching the kingdom that had tried to destroy them both. The scars would remain. The court would fight. Veyron's shadow would linger for a long time. But Lirael and Darius had chosen each other, not out of duty, not out of power, but out of fire and pain and hard-won truth. And in her womb, their child, the bridge between past and future, stirred once more. The Dragon King had burned the wrong woman. From her ashes rose not just a queen, but the beginning of a new era, one where fire no longer served the throne, but protected the heart that would change everything.